The ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah have always been wrapped in mystery. Their fiery end is known mainly through biblical stories. But could archaeology actually prove that this dramatic incident event happened?
So I'm up here on the site called locally Numeera, and this is the site that the archaeologists associated with Gomorrah.
Well, yes, according to the latest discoveries, the destruction described in the Bible is more than a symbolic tale. There's strong evidence suggesting that it was a real historical event, tucked away under layers of ash, charred bones, and mysterious sulfur balls. Today we'll be taking a closer look. Deep in the southeastern region of the Dead Sea, an archaeological site has sparked the curiosity of historians and researchers alike: Sodom and Gomorrah. In the Abrahamic religions, both of these cities were destroyed by God for their wickedness. References to the destruction of the two cities can be found in other religious texts as well. Archaeologist Bryant Wood, who works with the Associates for Biblical Research and is the editor of Bible and Spade magazine, believes that evidence of ancient cities can be found in land southeast of the Dead Sea. In the 20th century, archaeologists excavating the region found 5 ancient cities, which are now identified as Bab Edhdra, Numeera, Safi, Feifa, and Khanazir. According to Wood, all 5 of these cities are mentioned in the Bible, just under different names. He pointed to Genesis 14:8, where the cities are mentioned as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zoboim, and Bela. But we're going to talk about 2 today: Bab Edhdra, which was once Sodom, and Numeera, which was Gomorrah. And there's a lot of geological evidence supporting this claim. Take Bab Edhdra for one. According to the Bible, when the angels came down, they told Lot, "Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away." And if you look east along the south wall, you'll notice the mountains nearby. What's more, when the 2 angels arrived in Sodom to warn Lot, they found him sitting at the city gate. This small detail suggests that Sodom was a fortified city, something that lines up with archaeological findings. Bab Edhdra, believed by many to be ancient Sodom, wasn't just a simple settlement. Its name, meaning Gate of the Arm, hints at strong defenses, and excavations confirm it had imposing fortifications. The larger of the 2 sites, Sodom, was a bustling settlement, complete with defensive walls, homes, and an enormous cemetery, one that held the remains of an estimated 500,000 people. But when archaeologists began digging, they were shocked to find something unusual. This burial ground, just like the city itself, had been consumed by fire.
And what archaeologists found here was this burn destruction that goes across this site. This city came to an end through a fire destruction.
But why is that worth mentioning? Well, it's because cemeteries were considered sacred, and the fact that one had been burned suggested that it was not the work of raiders. So what happened? Well, according to the Bible, the cities were destroyed when the Lord rained down sulfur on the 2 cities from heaven.
And so it's estimated from the archaeologists that dug here back in the 60s and the 70s that there are around 500,000 people buried in this cemetery. And it's just staggering. And what's really intriguing then is that they found a burn destruction across the cemetery that happened at the same time that the city was destroyed. So the city and the cemetery were destroyed in the same fire disaster.
And here's what Woods had to say about it. Basically, archaeologists have no explanation for this, but the Bible does give us an explanation, doesn't it? It says that God rained down this burning material on the cities from the sky. Not only the cities, but the area surrounding the cities. Here we have graphic evidence that, yes, something from above came down onto these houses, setting the roof on fire and eventually burning the entire structure. The geologists who studied these sites, both Bab Edhdra and Numeera, say the Earth's surface shifted at the very time the cities were destroyed and burned by fire. And so it's possible that petroleum deposits under the Earth escaped through the earthquake's fault lines, after which they were ignited and then fell back down onto the cities. At Numeera, the site often linked to Gomorrah, the devastation is equally catastrophic. Archaeologists uncovered buildings that had collapsed under extreme heat, with human skeletons still trapped beneath the rubble. What's more, the ruins were buried under thick layers of ash, clear proof that the fire was so intense that it left no chance for survival.
Human remains, bones, are all through this ash. As you can see.
But that's not even the most haunting detail. Unlike other ancient cities that were rebuilt after disasters, neither Bab-ed-Dra nor Numira were ever resettled. Whatever happened here wasn't just destructive, it was final. Excavation reports from archaeologists like Walter Rost and Thomas Schaub leave no doubt. A massive fire swept through both Bab-ed-Dra and Numira, leaving every excavated area covered in layers of charred debris. What makes this even more compelling is that Rast, a secular archaeologist with no religious agenda, couldn't ignore the eerie similarities between the evidence and the biblical account. While he approached the findings purely from a scientific perspective, he even had to admit that the destruction at these sites resembled the fiery catastrophe described in ancient texts. Here's a brief rundown of exactly what they found. Over the final layer was a thick 0.5 to 0.1 meters layer of ashy debris, in which were found the skeletons of 2 mature males who perished in the final destruction of the town. Over this was mud brick detritus and rockfall. Under the topsoil, desert pavement, and a naturally deposited wind-blown sandy soil, the entire area was covered by the ashy debris of the final destruction of the town, up to 0.40 meters in depth. This ash contained fragments of wooden beams that had supported the roofs of the dwellings and lay immediately over the latest occupational layer within each room, sealing the material beneath it. Not infrequently, there was mud brick detritus over the ash, which had resulted from the collapse of the mud brick superstructures after the final conflagration. Still, as mind-blowing as those findings were, one of the biggest mysteries is the sulfur blows. See, according to the Bible, God rained down fire. But is there any archaeological proof of the source of this fire? Well, that's where sulfur balls come in.
These sulfur balls that are found in the area, their interpretation is that these are the culprits. That this is what caused these cities in this area to be burned in the ancient past.
But where did these sulfur balls actually come from? If they really rained down and destroyed these cities, why do we mostly find them buried in old seabed layers instead of where the cities once stood? Well, one geologist who visited the site had an interesting theory. He suggested that any sulfur balls hitting dry land would have burned up completely, leaving barely a trace. But the ones that splashed into the Dead Sea? That's a different story. The water would have extinguished them instantly, sending them sinking to the bottom. Over time, they got buried under layers of sediment, eventually becoming part of the geological record we're digging up today.
Just to give you an idea of how many sulfur balls there are. So this is a sulfur ball. Sulfur balls, all these are sulfur balls.
So, if this theory holds up, it might explain why we don't see tons of sulfur balls scattered all over the ruins, but plenty locked away beneath what used to be the sea. When modern explorers went hunting for sulfur balls, they didn't find them lying around the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah as you might expect. Instead, the real discoveries happened in areas where the Dead Sea used to cover the land. To see just how intense these sulfur balls really were, researchers lit one up. The result? A scorching fire that instantly melted the sulfur.
This is one of the reasons why sulfur balls would only be preserved in water. So really, anywhere that they would have landed on land, they would have burned up like this, and they would have burned anything flammable around them. This is how the cities in the plain were burned.
So, what do we make of all this? The ruins, the ash, the sulfur balls. All of it paints a picture eerily similar to the biblical account. Whether divine judgment or a freak natural disaster, something catastrophic happened to these cities. And while the mystery of Sodom and Gomorrah may never be fully solved, the evidence buried beneath the Dead Sea keeps the story alive. What's your take on all of this? Let me know in the comment section below and make sure to leave a like. I'll catch you next time.